Hello friends, family, and intimate reading associates. It's spooky season. And you know what that means. On this channel, we're going to talk about spooky books, horror books that I want to read this year in the year of 2025. In the past, everybody has known me as a Stephen King fanatic. Each October, I dedicate everything to all things Stephen King. Here on the channel, we like to call it Kingtober. But this year, taking a bit of a step back from all of the Stephen King content, because guess what? I realized I do need to branch out from him and his horror. What better way than to come up with a list of 10 scary books that I want to read this year? So, without further ado, let's get into the spooky book recommendations. First and foremost, House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. This may come as a surprise to some, because I don't think I've ever really talked about wanting to read this book on this channel. But I do. It's actually one of the most recommended books on this channel by one subscriber in particular. You know who you are. Thank you for recommending this book. Yes, you keep it at the forefront of my mind, but this book, there's something about it that intimidates the life out of me, but simultaneously intrigues me like no other book has. This book is most often categorized as a horror, but that's only a partial answer of what this book actually is, okay? I'm not going to even begin to tell you the plot of this novel because, well, I really don't know anything about it. That this is a very ergodic book. It's very experimental literature, so that being said, I'm already quite intimidated by it. But it's not just horror. This book has also been equally categorized as a psychological thriller and a love story. So do with that what you will. Horror, psychological thriller, love story. Because I don't know much about it, I don't know why it's scary. I just know that the physical form of this book is a very much integral part of the meaning of the book. And at the forefront of the experience of this book, it sounds like the reader is actively involved in creating its narrative. That's what I meant by ergodic. What do I think this is going to rank on the spooky rating? I'm going to give this a 10 out of 10. I think this is going to scare the life out of me, but I also think this is going to be one of the best books that I will ever read. That's book number 10. Justin Cronin's The Passage. Typically found in the horror section at any bookstore, this book is more than just a scary novel. It is also equal parts science fiction and thriller. From what I've heard of this is a post-apocalyptic science fiction horror thing. It's a conglomeration of a lot of heavy genres. It's an epic story of survival in a ruined world, and we all love that. Some of the best horror post-apocalyptic stories that I've ever read are I Am Legend by Richard Matheson, Swan Song by Robert McCammon, The Stand by Stephen King. It sounds like Justin Cronin's trilogy of The Passage sounds like it'd be right up my alley. Do I think this book is going to be scary? I'm gonna give it about a 4 out of 10, just based on the back. I don't think it's gonna be all that scary to me because most horror doesn't really scare me. I think this is gonna be more thrilling and epic, and I think I'm gonna fall in love with the characters, but I don't think I'm gonna be all that scared. Number 8. N0S4A2 by Joe Hill. Yes, part of branching out from Stephen King is, well, reading books written by his son. Can you blame me? I don't feel like repeating myself by saying NOS4A2, so we're just going to call this book License Plate, because that is a license plate on the cover. Thank you very much. The only thing that I know about this book is the back. And this 100% sounds like a blending of horror and dark fantasy meets supernatural suspense. It sounds like everything that his father's good at. I mean, from what I've heard of the guy's writing, we have a woman who has a very uncanny knack for finding things. We also have a man named Charles that she escaped from and that he's been hunting her down ever since. But apparently, the dark fantasy side of this is that there's alternate worlds or possibly another alternate reality. I don't quite know. That's where the dark fantasy comes into play. But this book sounds right up my alley. Since I love Stephen King so much, I've read over 40 of his novels. It just sounds like Mr. Joe Hill is following in his father's footsteps and writing with such imagination. I feel like there are going to be parts of this that are very unsettling because this does deal with childhood trauma, I think. That's always really frightening. Where do I think it's going to fall on the spooky scale? I think it's going to be about 5 out of 10 because if he's anything like his father, I mean, Stephen King doesn't really scare me. He more disturbs me at times, unnerves me at others, keeps me on the edge of my seat at other times. I could probably only name 3 instances where Stephen King actually scared me. I'm hoping that this book proves me wrong. I'm hoping that I find something extraordinarily scary in this book, but who knows? All right, next. The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers. You know I had to put some cosmic horror. And of course, this is like the foundational work, as far as I'm aware, right? If there were any other works that were precursors to this one, please let me know in the comments. But as far as I'm aware, this is the granddaddy of all things cosmic horror. This influenced men such as H.P. Lovecraft, who of course is the giant among giants when it comes to cosmic horror. Maybe there's something to be said about Robert W. Chambers. Written in 1895, this is a short story collection of 10 different stories that tell the tale of a mysterious play that drives people mad. Oh my gosh, that sounds incredible. But it sounds like it dabbles in a lot of different genres, horror being one of the forefront. But I've seen this book classified as weird fiction. What the fetch does that mean? But for the most part, this blends horror, gothic, fantasy, romance. I mean, you name it, this book kind of is a hodgepodge of a lot of stuff. This is one of the most significant, if not the most significant influences on the genre of cosmic horror, which of course, cosmic horror deals with the incomprehensible, the unknowable, trying to push past the realms and boundaries of reality and see what's on the other side. And that's what's interesting to me about The King in Yellow, about a play that drives people mad. Why does it drive people mad? I've seen influences of this book scattered throughout several different forms of media. First and foremost, in one of my favorite seasons of television ever, True Detective. The writer and creator of True Detective said that he drew a lot of inspiration from The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers, and The King in Yellow himself is actually mentioned. So I don't know if that's the character of The King in Yellow or the play that's being mentioned. And that's why this book is so intriguing to me, because of one, how old it is, and two, the influences that you see not just in horror, but in other forms of media, in television and in other genres of literature. Now, when it comes to spooky scale, I've left that as a question mark. I don't know if this is going to be scary or not. I'm hoping it's horribly scary. But that's what we got. King in Yellow, number 7. Ooh, number 6. Joan Sampson's The Auctioneer. This is all about a small little town being manipulated by a charismatic person who comes into town disguised as an auctioneer. It's explosive, it's chilling, and apparently the New York Times challenges anyone to resist it after reading the first few pages. This is another one of those oldies, dude. 1975. There's gonna be a lot of older books on this list because I'm looking for the classics. I'm not looking for the contemporary horror per se. Of course, we have Joe Hill and we have Justin Cronin. When doing research for this video, I was looking for older books that fly under the radar or go unnoticed or missed. And The Auctioneer, though there are several videos of booktubers giving their reviews of this book, there's not that many. This is the only book written by this author, but this book sounds frightening. It's also been heralded as a precursor to something like Stephen King's Needful Things, which if you've read that book, you know how creepy that book is. And the fact that this came nearly 20 years before it. I'm all about a small town being driven insane by some mysterious figure that just so happens to influence and manipulate things in a certain way. That spooky rating, spooky scale. I think this is going to be about a 6. I think there's going to be some unsettling moments. I might get disturbed a little bit. Who's to say? This is all speculation, right? I've not read this book, so I can't really tell you. But I think it's going to be fun. Anytime I've read a book that has the word chilling or haunting on the front cover, I know it's actually going to be kind of scary. So I'm excited about that bad boy. Now, before we get deeper into this list, I do want to talk to you about a few honorable mentions, and those come from today's sponsor, Book of the Month. Book of the Month is a subscription-based book service that brings the best new and emerging authors right to your doorstep. I've said it before and I'll say it again, these are really good books at really great prices. On average, members save about $5 on every single hardcover that they purchase, which by the way is a freaking steal. They have a specialized team of curators that personally reads and selects every single book. And each selections are picked from the best new and emerging authors. But let me show you what I got. In honor of spooky season, The Haunting of Payne's Hollow by Kelly Armstrong. I picked this because this was an obvious choice for the fall. What the heck? Of course I'm going to pick a horror novel. And then I also got Marie Lu's Red City. Look at that fetching sprayed edge. Yes, they do offer special editions, but this is a dark fantasy story about ambition, power, politics, and so much more. But Ian, how does it work? It's simple. Can you read that okay? 1, you pick what speaks to you. 2, they send it right to your doorstep. 3, you pretty much freaking repeat the process every month. And 4, happy reading. And if you're not feeling that month's selections, you do have the option to skip that month without payment, because that's just how Book of the Month rolls. You really do get nothing but quality with Book of the Month every single time. If you're interested in Book of the Month, click the link down below in the description and get your first book for only $5 plus any hat of your choosing when you use the code CANDY. That's right, CANDY. Thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring today's video. Back to the list of spooky books. Richard Matheson's Hell House. You don't get much better than a classic haunted house story, and this is one of the quintessential haunted house stories. Now, of course, I probably should have included something like Shirley Jackson's Haunting of Hill House on here, but I didn't. Richard Matheson's Hell House. This is also the author of I Am Legend, one of the greatest vampire stories ever written. This freaking book, every single time I've sat down to try and read this, I always remember that I have 4 other projects that I'm in the middle of. I feel bad, but I always DNF it because it's like, well, I don't have time to read it. This year, I'm carving out freaking time to read it. A group of people go on a scientific exploration into the infamous Belasco house, where apparently unimaginable horrors and depravity took place. One of the people is a return guest to this house because they escaped the nightmare that they experienced a few years before. And Richard Matheson, I mean, he's one of the GOATs. One of the greatest names of the genre. Dang, this even has a Ray Bradbury freaking blurb on it. One of those who have moved imaginative fiction from the sidelines into the literary mainstream. Ray Bradbury said that about Richard Matheson? Okay, so he's literally the best. This is straight up horror, quintessential haunted house trope. Also sounds like it's a mixture of paranormal and supernatural suspense. I feel like Matheson is just going to take my expectations and completely rip them to shreds, because everything that I have read from him has exceeded expectations in a way that chilled me to the bone. On the spooky scale, this is a solid 8 out of 10. I know this is going to scare me. I know this is going to leave me unsettled, and I'm excited to feel that. I'm just going to make sure to read it in the daytime. Number 4, Anne Rivers Siddon's The House Next Door. Yet another haunted house story by an author that I don't ever see talked about on BookTube. In fact, well, this is the first book I'll ever read of this author. I did a lot of deep dive research into what were the 10 scary, spooky books that I wanted to read this year. This book popped up on so many lists. But the interesting thing about it is that the author is not a horror writer. She's primarily like historical fiction, literary fiction. She writes a lot of Southern dramas, Southern family dramas, generational stories. She's a bona fide female version of Pat Conroy. In fact, Pat himself has a blurb on the back. I'm sorry, one of my favorite authors of all time has a blurb on the back of a horror novel? Shut up. He said, Anne Rivers Siddons delivers the goods, the whole fabulous package, with every book she writes. Oh my gosh. This house keeps driving families away from this quiet, quaint, picturesque Atlanta neighborhood. And the mystery is why. I couldn't be more excited about this. Look at this. This is so unassuming. You're like, oh my gosh, it's so pretty. Oh my God, I bet this is about like somebody finding love, or maybe it's about a husband and a wife. They've been estranged, and maybe they reconcile their differences. Maybe they get their lives back together. Maybe they fix their family. Maybe they fix themselves. No, this is a straight up horror novel. Apparently, it's on several lists. So one of the scariest books written in the last 50 years? Haunted house supernatural thriller. I am all here for it. Now, spooky, because this is so unassuming, you know it's scary. So I'm gonna give this a solid 7 out of 10. I think it's gonna give me some chills. I think it's gonna feel like a finger running up my spine. I think it's gonna make the hair stand up on the back of my neck. Before we move on to the top 3, I do want to hear from you guys. I want to hear your recommendations. I want to hear the spooky books that you're trying to enjoy this spooky season. Drop them down in the comments. Let me hear it all. Book 3, Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. Can you believe I've never read this? I can't. This is like the quintessential coming of age dark fantasy horror. A spooky carnival comes to town and 2 young boys lose their innocence along the way of experiencing the nightmares of this carnival, specifically in this enigmatic, creepy figure who kind of runs this thing. And I've heard so many good things about this book. I have loved every single thing that I've read from this man, so I know he's not going to disappoint. He's such a well-rounded author. He's a master of speculative fiction. And of course, with a title like Something Wicked This Way Comes, I mean, it's gotta be good, right? It's gotta be scary. I know Bradbury's gonna deliver on the prose, and I know he's going to give me one of the best, if not maybe the best coming-of-age story I'll ever read. It's gonna be hard to beat Stephen King's It. When it comes to the spooky scale, I want to be open-minded and give it a 7 out of 10. I don't think I'm going to be all that scared, but then again, Bradbury is the master. He's one of the best, and so he may give me some things to reconsider. So I'm hoping he proves me wrong on that. All right, book 2. The Terror by Dan Simmons. Oh my gosh, The Terror by Dan Simmons. A masterfully chilling work, brutal, relentless, yet oddly uplifting. With a freaking cover like that, this can only be extremely scary. I mean, look at that. That boat is surrounded by floating ice. It's stuck. So the sailors, what? They get off in the middle of an frozen ocean? If I have one irrational fear, it is deep water. You will never find me caught in that kind of situation because I'm planting all 10 toes on solid ground. What sets this book apart from a lot of books on this list is that this is actually historical fiction horror. Oh yes, supernatural horror merged with historical fiction. It's based on the 1845 Franklin expedition to the North Passage. I mean, hear this. Stranded in a nightmarish landscape of encroaching ice and darkness, endlessly cold, the crew struggle to survive with poisonous rations, a dwindling coal supply, and ships buckling in the grip of crushing ice. But their real enemy is even more terrifying. There's something out there in the frigid darkness, an unseen predator stalking their ship, a monstrous terror clawing to get in. Oh, okay, say less. Abominable Snowman, here we go. No, I know it's not that. He wrote a book called Abominable, so it's a completely different story. I'm hoping it's like some weird monster, man. It's gotta be. Please don't disappoint me and have it just be some bear. When it comes to the spooky scale for The Terror, I think I'm going to give this a solid 9. Any book that I've read where it's the theme of isolation and being hunted at the same time. Look at that crap. That is not okay. That is unsettling already. I'm going to find out, and I think it's going to be horrible. All right, folks, last but certainly not least, that hands down has to be Peter Straub's Ghost Story. Peter Straub, one of the masters of the horror genre. My gosh, this is a book that Stephen King said was the scariest book that he's ever read. But he's not the only one to say that. Cosmopolitan said, not since Edgar Allan Poe has an author taken such liberties with his readers' nerves. The Dallas Morning News had this to say, one of the most frightening novels you will ever read. Newsweek said, the best thing of its kind since Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. And then to top it all off, we had the Chicago Sun-Times saying, the scariest book I've ever read. It crawls under your skin and into your dreams. I think the blurbs alone speak for it, but what is this book about? It is about 4 old men who gather around weekly, or is it monthly, I forget, to tell ghost stories to one another. But there is one story that keeps following them from their past, and the past is finally clawing its way back into their lives, and they're going to have to confront something that they did a very long time ago. Apparently, the terror just mounts and mounts and mounts. I mean, when you take the title for your book as Ghost Story, it's gotta be the ghost story. Am I right? But this is yet another small town scary story, a town going insane, a town being influenced by something sinister and evil under its surface, and our main characters are just caught in the middle, and it sounds so frightening. I think this is going to be another 10 out of 10. I'm going to put it up there with House of Leaves on the spooky scale because, I mean, so much has been said about this. This book sounds absolutely scary, and I think it's going to be one of those that actually does the trick of scaring me this year because I want to be scared by a horror novel. I do want this book to crawl under my skin and into my dreams. Joking, I actually don't want that. I like pleasant sleep. Thank you very much. We're going to get into this very, very soon. Well, folks, there you have it. These are the 10 scary books that I want to read this year in an attempt to actually scare the crap out of me. Here we go. That is it. Folks, let me know down in the comments what scary books you're reading this year. Let me know down in the comments what the scariest book that you've ever read is, and maybe I'll check it out. And before you forget and sign on out of here, remember to take advantage of this sweet deal from Book of the Month by clicking the link down below in the description and getting your first book for only $5 plus any hat of your choosing when you use the code CANDY. I'm so excited to get the freaking crap scared out of me, and I will see you in the next one.
Spooky, spooky skeleton. Spooky, spooky skeleton. Spooky, spooky.
You know what? I actually forget the rest of the lyrics.
Spooky, 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 spook.